I want to be the best at everything that I do.
You were born in Puerto Rico,
Yes.
right? Okay, so how long did you live there?
I lived in Puerto Rico till I was about, let's see, first grade, so whatever that puts me in, I guess, yeah, yeah, something like that.
And then you moved to New York after?
From there we lived in Florida, spent some time in Milwaukee, then New York, and then here in Pennsylvania.
How much do you remember about Puerto Rico?
Actually, I do. I remember quite a good bit. I remember I had a goat, had a pet goat, and my pet goat, the way that my mom would find me, because I would just play in the yard, it had a big cowbell, and wherever she heard the cowbell, she knew where I was at. So that's one of my that's a really cool fond memory that I have. But I remember just sitting outside and listening to my parents talk and hearing my grandparents play dominoes like everybody else. So I have some really cool memories from Puerto Rico.
So how did you end up in Lancaster then?
Well, I was offered a general manager position at a local fitness center. At first, I declined it. I wanted to stay in Bethlehem. I lived in Bethlehem at the time. That's where my family's at. But then I said, let me give it a shot. I visited Lancaster. It wasn't so bad. So then I accepted the position. And then I just fell in love with it.
But now you're in the police force, right?
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
Well, I always wanted to be a law enforcement officer. I've always had an affinity towards law enforcement, military. I come from a military family. My father, grandfather, they served together almost 55 years in the military. My son's going into the Marine Corps next year. My path took me to law enforcement a little later in life because I had my sons. I have two boys. I was a junior in high school when I found out I was going to be a father. So that was life throwing me a curveball.
Yeah.
And my dad said, well, you're now a man. Go get a job. So at first, I tried to balance being a father and having full-time employment. I would take my son to daycare before going to school. But that didn't last too long. I was exhausted. I couldn't come home and study. I would have to go to work, so I ended up dropping out. I had never finished high school. Something that I don't want to say that I regret, but I had to do what I had to do for my family. I went back. I got my GED probably 2 years later. And with that, I knew that I wanted to provide for my kids. So I was working a full-time job, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, trying to find as much work as I can. GED, not a whole lot of experience. So I knew eventually I did decide to go back to school. And went back to school. Still in school. I take classes part-time when I can, when I'm not at work. I want to get my master's degree in criminal justice.
So how did you end up on the police force? Like, where did you go to school, I guess, for your training?
Right. So I went to the Municipal Police Academy, which is in Harrisburg. Harrisburg Community College runs it. So it's a police academy in a college setting. So you learn what you need to learn as far as being a police officer, but they also throw in a lot of different things, which actually for me helped me very much because it provided me with extra college credits to go towards my degree. Right now I'm working on 2 separate degrees, one in international relations and the other one in police science, both of which I should finish next fall. So that's something that I'm very proud of. I always knew that I wanted to serve in my community. Being from Lancaster County and Lancaster City, where I was living in the past 10 years, I really didn't want to work anywhere else other than Lancaster City, just because I know the community knows me very well. So I felt at the time that it would be the best fit for me. After spending a few months with Lancaster City, I quickly found out that it was not in my best interests for various reasons, and I wasn't going to stay in the department and have them continue to put resources into me, into training me. So I resigned last February, and then a few months after that, my current chief reached out to me and said, hey, come in, I want to talk to you and interview you. And I did that. I met with the other police officers, and shortly thereafter I started working with the York City School District.
So you're at the Where in the school district?
So our jurisdiction is the entire school district, all the properties, all the buildings. My office is in Phineas Davis, and it's a K through 8 building. So I have little munchkins that literally are munchkins to all the way to 8th graders. They're great kids. I have some kids that, as soon as I arrive, I purposely put my music on loud because I like seeing them dance when I pull up. So they keep me cool. At least they think I'm cool. They help me with my bags, who come inside, and I know they like to help me with my bags so they can come inside because it's cold out, but it gives me an opportunity to talk to them and see what's going on in their life, so that's pretty cool.
Do you ever get into the classrooms at all?
I do. It's actually probably a little bit too much. The teachers get a little angry because I interrupt class. But I'll walk by and they make you feel like a rock star. They're like, oh, it's Officer Hernandez, and then everybody stands up, and I can see the teachers sometimes frown, and they're not very happy about it, but it's fun. That's one of the perks of the job. So earlier in the year, I had an assembly for them, and in the assembly, we were like something about who could do the most push-ups. So I was like, all right. So I called like 5 kids up, and I said, well, if you guys can do more push-ups than I can together, then I'll get you all donuts. And then one of my security monitors, as I was doing push-ups, held me down, and they beat me. So I'm still trying to get to every class. And when I come into school, there's this particular little one. She's in 1st grade, and she puts her hands on her hips, and she looks at me, and she's like, we're still waiting for our donuts. So it's really cute. So I try not to be partial, but it's just some of the kids really I see every day, and they go out of their way to say hi to me, so I do a little extra for them.
So it means a lot to you to be a role model.
Oh, that's the best. That's the best part of policing for me. There's a lot of different ways to police. Obviously, you have your adults and your violent criminals. I want to be able to reach. The reason why I got into policing was to reach kids at an early age. Help offset behavior that they can get later on in life. Most crimes happen between the age of 16 to 24. So if I can get them before that, identify, maybe behavior problems that need to be addressed or something, a link that's missing in their system, get them whatever help they need so they don't become that statistic. Also not necessarily charging kids with every little thing, but also saying, okay, you know what, there's a lot of different alternatives that we can do. When I was a kid, we were all kids. We've done things, but no one's perfect. Some of us just got away with it. Some kids aren't that fortunate. It doesn't make them bad kids. So you have to be able to speak with the kids, see exactly what happened, why they did what they did, and trying to figure out with their parents and other resources like guidance counselors, behavior specialists, administration, what we can do to make sure that kid gets the help that he needs and not get a citation for, disorderly conduct or harassment, have a criminal record at 12 years old. That doesn't make any sense. You're not helping, the issue. You're actually creating more issues for this kid.
So what inspired you to take this path and to be a role model and to help kids at this age?
Well, there's various reasons. One, the 2 most important reasons are my sons. I know I'm a role model to them, so I want to be the person that they're proud of. That's number 1 for me. Every decision that I make, I always defer to them. What would they think if I did this, or if I did something wrong? How would they feel? So that's my number 1 go-to. Secondly, I look back at myself, and I did some things when I was an adolescent, teenager that I'm not proud of, but I had really good role models and mentors that saw I wasn't a bad kid, saw that I just made poor decisions and took me under their wing, and this is where I am. They are why I am where I am today. And it wasn't, just a few individuals. It's people throughout my life that saw something in me that encouraged me or pushed me in the right direction, opened doors for me. While, yes, I had to do a lot of the work myself, I still needed help. I needed someone to say, hey, you know what, why don't you try this instead of this? So, women, males. My mom was a huge role model for me. Her empathy. That's probably where actually, I know that's where I get my empathy from. She was super, I don't think I've ever met a sweeter woman in my life. I get my work ethic from my dad, who's worked, all day, 14, 15 hours a day. So I'm a good combination of both of them, I feel.
You had said that you like to get involved in the community. What are some of the things that you've done kind of outside of work to help out in the community?
Well, I try to be as active as I can, mostly in nonprofit organizations that deal with adolescents. There are one that a board I used to be on, it was called Kuss. They're court-appointed special advocates for children in Lancaster County. I spent some time with the Mixed Hour Place in southeast Lancaster. So pretty much, again, these are kids who are good kids, but they just need someone to be there for them, to be an advocate for them. The old, saying, some kids will fall through the cracks. That, to me, that's unacceptable. I can't accept that. I won't accept that. So I work hard to make sure no kids get through the cracks, at least when I'm on my watch. It sounds pretty lame to say, but that's how I feel. I volunteer. I try to do ad hoc projects. Whenever I see a need, if someone says, hey, I need this, I need food, I need shelter, I need someone who needs that, I gather my friends. I'm like, hey, I know my friend, has a store, my friend has this service or this business, and I'm really fortunate to have great friends that when I call them, they're like, absolutely, whatever you need, Randolph. And, through them, I'm just the conduit to get, whatever service or goods I see to that person.
I was looking online a little bit before the interview and just found a list of things. And I don't know, maybe correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, but you're involved with Leadership Lancaster.
Yes, I was. I graduated from Leadership Lancaster a few years ago. Best class ever. I just need to say that. Have to say that.
Co-chair of the Latino Democratic Caucus.
Yes, I used to be involved in the county Democratic Party. Now I'm involved in the city Democratic Party. A friend of mine, we saw a need for organization. So we co-founded the Latino Democratic Caucus of Lancaster County. And essentially what that is just getting Latinos from all different, walks of life, from Lancaster City, Hempfield, Ephrata, wherever, we are at, to come together and, speak about our experiences, what we would like to see done, and not necessarily to get involved in politics, but also just to, again, kind of going back to kids, seeing potential in them and say, okay, you're interested in this, what resources do we have to help you excel in that? So if you wanted to be in a nonprofit or in a business, we would put you in the right direction, help you exceed in that. And one of our early members was actually now, she's the first Latina city council member of Lancaster City. So, so that's the kind of thing that we want to see.
Yeah. So can you describe how important it seems, and I've read some of the articles and letters that you've written to Lancaster newspapers on their website, your heritage seems kind of paramount in your life. Can you just kind of speak about that a little bit, what that means to you?
Absolutely. Even a little tattoo I have. I'm working on a sleeve right now, and this sleeve pretty much consists of different elements of my culture that I'm very passionate about. Pretty much for me, it's where I come from. That's where my parents are from, my family's from. Things that are very important to me, like family, my religion, all these things I've learned, from my culture. And my culture, every culture is beautiful. I'm a partial to mine, obviously, because it's mine. But, I can say that if you were to come to Puerto Rico and I were introduced to my family, by the time you left, you would be part of my family. They would take you in as their own. And that's something that's very near and dear to me, and I take that with me whenever I go. And I meet people, and I try to make them feel as welcome when they're with me as my family would. I love my island. I love my culture. I'm very fortunate and blessed that I was born where I was born.
And what is the word for the island? I saw in one of the articles that you wrote that the
Borinquen, Borinquen, and Puerto Ricans refer themselves as Boricuas. So to be Puerto Rican, there's no such thing as 100% Puerto Rican. It's actually a mix of three different races. You're a mix of Taino Indian, which were the native inhabitants of the island. You're a mixture of Spanish, and you're also a mixture of African. So those three cultures coming together, for me, I feel blessed because I have such rich diversity that I look back on, and it's reflected on our music, on our food, on our clothing, the way we correspond with each other. It's a beautiful thing.
I think I kind of see that reflected in your own life, even just with your son. I mean, you hear about so many guys who have kids in high school that would just be like, I'm not ready for that responsibility, and you stepped up and worked your butt off, basically.
My kids are my world. I'm hard on my kids, but it's because I know they can do it. My son, he's actually in ROTC right now, and he's doing great. I'm super proud he's going into the Marine Corps. He's really proud. He's continuing the family business. He found his call and his niche. But I know a lot of it also. I can see the spark in his eye when he talks to me about it. He does want to make me proud.
And you have a family history of military service.
Yeah. I have relatives in the Air Force, in the Navy. Both my father and his father were in the Army. So we're a very patriotic family, and anyone who serves our country, in my family, there's a great deal of respect. So
what did the recent storms and tragedies in Puerto Rico, how did that affect you? Do you have family there that it affected? I do. I have a lot of family there. I have some family here now, actually living with my grandmother in Bethlehem. And I can tell you, in my lifetime, I probably cried. Maybe, I'm not kidding, twice. And one of those instances, I remember I was sitting in bed, and I was just overcome with just emotion. I just started just crying, and it was really hard for me to just know that there were so many people in need of help, and they weren't getting the help they need. Like, here I am in my warm bed, I have water, I have electricity, I have pretty much anything, all my basic needs here, but there's someone somewhere suffering, and that just, it broke my heart. Do you get back to Puerto Rico often, or have you been back since you left?
I'll be there in a couple days.
There you go.
I'm leaving this Friday for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, so, people ask me, well, why are you going there? There's not a lot of amenities or power, et cetera, and me, I don't care, it's home. Yeah. To ask someone why they're going home, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't expect a lot of people to understand that. Islanders, people who are born in the island, they understand that. It's just a connection that you have to your birthplace. You want to make sure that it's okay. You want to do your own part to give back. While we're there, we're going to spend, money. They need money. If we find people who need help preparing, we're going to be there on vacation. But for me, it's also, I want to make sure that I'm doing as much as I can to give back to them, to know that I'm not just sitting here in Lancaster, PA, not doing anything. That doesn't work for me.
How often do you get the...
About twice a year.
Oh, okay. It's a lot.
Yeah. Not enough, though.
Well, I know you can see where that really strong connection comes from.
Absolutely.
Like you just moved here and...
No, we moved a lot, my family, with my dad being in the military and everything, but I can tell you that the two places that I've only ever felt like I was at home is Lancaster and Puerto Rico. I mean, I went to 3 high schools in 4 years. So Lancaster and Puerto Rico are the two places that I felt that are like home for me.